Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about the p5.js web editor and how we might want to move away from this at some point when we tackle bigger projects towards a more robust, full-fledged code editor. So let's start with the web editor and talk about why it's great and it can be very useful for us. I mean, by now we've been quite familiar with this editor, and the main advantage of the browser-based p5 editor is that it's always available. It's assuming you have an internet connection. When you're getting started, you don't have to install any software. You can just create an account, go to your browser, and start programming right away. So it's very convenient for that. It's also very straightforward, so there are not a lot of menus to get lost in. It really allows you to focus on your code and the result over here without too much stuff getting in the way. So it's great for that, and it's perfect for sketching quick ideas and writing short programs. But at some point, when you start to tackle bigger projects, for example, the game project you're building in this course, or just more intricate projects, the editor starts to show some of its limitations. It can get tricky to manage, working with a lot of asset files, for example. You have to upload them, and it's not very convenient to manage them. Bigger projects also, there's not a lot of functions in the editor to allow you to quickly navigate and browse large code bases. So it's great for small projects, but at some point, migrating towards something a little bit more standalone, more robust, is a good idea to explore. So we're going to do that in this video today. I'm going to quickly show you a workflow to work in p5.js within an editor called Visual Studio Code. There are many other editors out there, but I like Visual Studio Code for a lot of the features it brings to the table. This is a free product developed by Microsoft. You can download it for Windows, Mac, and most other platforms. I've already downloaded it and installed it, so I'm going to go ahead and just open up VS Code. All right. So the VS Code editor, obviously a lot more complex than the p5.js web editor, but also a lot more powerful. Now, in order to write JavaScript and specifically p5 projects in here, we're going to start by grabbing something called an extension. Extensions are available here on the left. It's the icon with the 4 boxes. We're going to click on extensions, and we are going to search the marketplace for p5. And you see there's quite a few different p5 related extensions, but the one that I like to use is an extension called p5.vscode. And what we're going to do is simply just call the install button over here. So what that and it's going to install itself, takes a few seconds. What this extension is going to allow us to do is to quickly create a template, basically a folder with all the basic scaffolding to create a p5.js sketch very quickly. It also has the feature where it can bring in external libraries, and it installs an additional extension for us that we don't need to now install called Live Server, which is going to be useful to be able to view our projects as we develop. Okay? So now that I've installed p5.vscode, the way that we use this extension is we open something called the command palette, and we're going to create a new p5 project. So the command palette is available up here in the view menu, or you can use the shortcut Control-Shift-P. And then when you open this palette, you can search for p5 because you'll be greeted with a lot of options. I had these in my recently used, but you won't see that. So just search for p5 and you'll see you have create a p5 project or install a library. We're going to select the first one, create a p5 project. Okay. So let's going to open up a file explorer. We're going to go to my desktop here, and p5 projects want to be installed inside a folder, an empty folder ideally. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a blank folder here. I'm going to call it my p5 project, just whatever. And you could create this ahead of time. Of course, we're going to select the folder and just click select folder. So this is going to open up a new window of VS Code. And it's going, of course, we're going to trust the authors because that's us. We are the author of this project. I'm going to magnify this here. And we can see that it's created my p5.js project folder. And inside of it, it's put all the files that we need to basically get started with a p5.js sketch. We have a blank index.html. It's not identical to the one from the web editor, but it's similar. And we can see that in this case, it's actually importing the libraries, right, from this folder called libraries. So it's not downloading them dynamically. These are actually available offline. So this will work even if you don't have your internet connection available. There's a file here called jsconfig.json. We're going to ignore that file. This just basically gives some information for the editor here. We have our sketch.js that we're used to working in. Here we have our setup and our draw, just like in the web editor. And then there's a basic style sheet that is styling the HTML we have over here. Okay. Sweet. And from here, we could just get started and write some p5.js code. Okay. Now you will notice something is happening in this editor that wasn't happening before. And as I'm typing stuff, right, one of the cool things about VS Code is that it will do some code completion for us and give us some suggestions. Some of the top suggestions are usually correct. So here it's suggesting window height. And one thing we can do here is we can either select it or hit tab as we're typing to complete. Yeah. So sometimes that can save you some typing as you're working. It's also going to start to suggest things. For example, here, if I say like circle, right? One of the cool things with this extension that Sam Naving has put together is that it will also bring up the reference page as you open the parentheses. So here we can see the parameters for circle, right? The first is x, y, and diameter, as well as the description from that function. So it gives you these little cues, these little hints as you're typing. Of course, you're free to ignore them as well if you want to. So let's just do a super basic like blank program here. So, okay, I'm going to save my sketch. Now, how do we see the outcome? Well, when we're working offline inside Visual Studio Code, what we need to do is we need to have some kind of web server running that will be able to provide, that will be able to serve our web page to a browser so that the browser can open it. What we're doing normally when we're inside the web editor, right? The web editor is already a web server in of itself, and when I'm working on this sketch here, it's opening for me the index page, right, that we've created, loading the sketch. It's all happening in the browser. But if we're doing this inside an offline editor, we need to create a local web server. So the way we do this, there's a few ways, but the way that I like to do it in this workflow is to use the live server extension. Okay, so live server extension here for Visual Code, it's installed automatically when we install p5.vs code. And what it does is it adds at the bottom right here this little button, which I just realized is kind of conveniently hidden behind my face. So it's right here at the bottom. It's called Go Live, right? It's got a little icon with little circles around a bar. It's a little bit small. It says Go Live, click to run live server. So I'm gonna click that button, and you'll see what happens. I'm gonna minimize that window again. Oops. All right. As soon as a live server starts, it opens up Chrome for me. So it's opened up the browser, and now I can see my sketch. If we look in the address bar here, we have this IP address 127.0.0.1. That's the IP address for something called the local host. So we're basically just accessing the server on our own computer. So we're not going out to the internet. It's just running locally. And the number after the column is something called the port. So the server has opened a specific port, and we're accessing that web page through that port. And all of this is happening. It's a closed loop, so other people cannot access this from the outside unless they know your outside IP address and they have access to it through your router. Okay? So this is running a local website that we can access, and we can do all of our development and debugging that way. Okay? Now, if you want to, you can kind of go in between those two pages. Oh, actually, this is the other window. I'm going to close that one. You can go in between the two different pages. One thing I like to do to set it up a little bit more like the way the p5.js editor functions is I move my browser to one side and I move the editor to the other side. So now I have this over here. and we can make changes. Now by default, it's not going to automatically refresh, and I kind of don't really like that behavior myself. So if we save the sketch here, this is now changing. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. This is kind of a bit intense. Let's just set a fill here, or whatever. We're not working too much on the program side here, just kind of focusing on the workflow. So if you save your sketch, it will automatically reload the page for you. And of course, you could manually hit the reload button and you could do your work from here. Now, what if we make a mistake? Again, like let's say I went over here and forgot my single quotes and save. Be like, oh, where's the circle? It's not running. Well, in the P5 web editor, we have access to the console, giving us the errors over here. When we're working inside Visual Studio Code, we have to rely on the browser's developer tools console. So this would be different for each browser, but this is how you open it in Chrome. Other ones will have a similar kind of path to the developer console. So in Chrome, you go under Tools, and you can open this developer tools here. So for me, it's going to open it down there, taking up a little bit of space here. And we will see over here, we have something called the console. Okay? And all of your errors are now going to appear inside this console. This is where you would access them. So it's telling me, just like the error I would get inside the web editor, right? It's saying gray is not defined at line 8. So I'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot my single quotes, right? And now everything's fine. So we have this this console over here that we can use to interact with our sketch. Okay? And of course, we can close it. We don't want to see it anymore. So just keep that in mind. If you want to see the errors and if you're programming, it's a good idea to have the console open. You can reposition it in your browser wherever it makes sense, but you do have to open it. It's an extra step which you don't have to do in the P5 web editor. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about some of the neat features that come with the Visual Studio Code editor. Now for starters, one of the things here, it's not obvious because this is a short program, but it always shows you kind of this overview here of your code. If you have a long sketch, a long program, you can easily navigate it by moving this, this window over here, and it will stretch down here. The other thing you get access to is you get an outline. So I can open the outline over here and it's going to allow me to quickly jump to one function or the other. So you can imagine if you're starting to have a long program with lots of sections, different classes, lots of functions, you can now access this outline on the side so that you can navigate to things directly. Or if you create variables, right? Global variables, we can create a variable over here instead, right? And you can see that this global variable is now appearing on the outline. So you can quickly navigate your code using this this outline feature over here, which is a really cool thing that sort of a more full-fledged programming editor will give you access to. And of course, it's got like a lot more powerful sort of search and replace functionality. You can go in here and you can if you select a variable, right, you could go and do something like you could rename it, and then it would find all the other instances in the code of that variable and automatically rename it for you. So it's a much more powerful editor that allows you to manipulate the source a lot more readily. Okay. Now, the other neat thing we can do, and again, I'm not going to cover in great detail all the things you can do with Visual Studio Code. You can basically just use it in the same way you would use the P5 web editor. You don't have to go deep into the functions of the editor, but just getting the code completion options, right? The ones at the top are usually relevant. You can ignore the rest. That's just digging into more and more JavaScript, function calls that kind of match the first few letters. This is useful. The outline is useful, and of course, the ability to now you can just kind of manage your files a little bit better. These can live on your computer and so forth. The last feature we're going to talk about is one of the cool things we can do with Visual Studio Code is we can set up collaborative coding sessions. So for example, if you're working on a group project and you want to have multiple people working on the same project, editing the same files at the same time, you can set that up in Visual Studio Code. This is difficult to do / impossible with the p5.js web editor. So let me show you how to do this. So we're going to install another extension called Live Share. So we're going to go to our extensions here. I'm going to search for share, and the first one that comes up is this Live Share extension. We're going to install it, and I'm going to show you how it works. All right, so now Live Share is on, is available. I'm going to close this tab, save my sketch. And what Live Share does is now I have access. I have a new icon that's appeared on the bottom here. It's a little arrow with a dot. It says Live Share, and it says share the workspace with Visual Studio Live Share. So let's turn that on. I'm going to click on this. Now it's going to ask you to sign in. So you need either a Microsoft account or a GitHub account to make use of this feature. Here I'm going to use my GitHub account to sign in. I'm going to allow this. You can create a GitHub account if you don't have one already. It's free. Okay, and then go back to Visual Studio Code. Sure, let's do it. So now that I've signed in through GitHub, you can see that my session is being shared. So it says now shared, and it's now telling me there's an invitation link that's been copied to the clipboard. Okay, we can send it to anybody we trust. Now I have this link on my clipboard. Just to demonstrate, I'm going to paste it here in the browser. So this is the link that was provided. I'm going to paste it to this tab. And what's going to happen is it's going to open a browser-based version of Visual Studio Code. Okay. If we wanted to, we could, let's say I sent this to my friend working on my project with me. They could choose to open this in their Visual Studio Code. That would work. We're just going to continue on the web version for now, just so you can see the difference. Okay. And we're going to continue as an anonymous contributor. We could sign in if we had a GitHub account. I'm just going to go anonymous, and I'm just going to be David. Okay. So on this end, you can see that it's now telling me, oh, David requested to join this session. We're going to accept. And now we have, right, on the right side here, this is my Chrome browser. This is using the link that I received from Visual Studio Code. And now I can go and I can make some changes. Oh, this is read only over here. Why is it read only? Oops. That's the chat. I don't need the chat here. So how do I make it being able to edit? I think it's possible that I'm currently read-only because I didn't log in on this side. Okay, so I'm just a guest, so I can only see what's happening. But you can see that over here, I have a user, right, that's able to go and edit the code, change it. So using this live share extension, you can set up these collaborative sessions. Yeah, and this tab is locked here. And because it's read-only right now, let me try one more time just to see if I can see the list of people who are in here. You can get people to follow you by sort of going to where you are in the code. this. Live share. Oh, there we go. Have some live share options over here. Make read write. Okay, that's the bit that I was missing. Sorry about that, everyone. So the let's try this. I'm gonna turn that on here. So okay, there we go. So I needed to give the participant read and write access. So under the live share menu over here, I right click on the participant that joined my session and gave them read write access. So now this window over here could actually go and make changes to the code. Okay, so this is pretty cool because now you can have two people or more, 3 or 4 people working on the same project, and they can save and they can save. So this could be, of course, on 2 different computers, working over the internet, collaborating. So to recap, live server, live share, right? You can create a share session. When you're done, you can just go ahead and you can stop the session. You can go stop collaboration session, and this will kick the other people out, right? So now they've been kicked out, and here we go. So something to explore if you're going to be working on bigger group projects. This way you can collaborate a lot more easily. The other thing I would encourage you to do is to use a folder on Google Drive to save your files. This way you get backups automatically as well. And yeah, so this is the basic workflow for developing in p5.js within Visual Studio Code using the using the live share extension and the p5.vs code extension. I hope that was useful, and see you next time.